All right, welcome to another edition of the Big Blue Report featuring that guy right there with that great sneaker collection in the background. He didn't get tossed from any games this week for kicking anybody. That's Jonathan Casillas, the two-time Super Bowl champion and defensive captain of the New York Football Giants. And, of course, we have the man underneath Big Daddy D, the professor, Ryan Darlington. And, guys, we are 1 week away or under 1 week away from the NFL draft. And guys, from the Giants' perspective, I got to tell you, we met with Joe Sheon yesterday for his pre-draft press conference, and a couple topics made some headlines. It certainly wasn't the draft. JC, apparently, from what I'm hearing, I heard a rumor that Saquon was not a voluntary workout.
You don't say.
I heard there was a little chatter.
You don't say.
There was a little chatter about it yesterday. I have to tell you, from a logical standpoint, now Ryan is the fan. JC, you're the player. You're a Super Bowl champion, and I'm in that media room. But I have to tell you, I have met some incompetent people in my life. But there's got to be a time in your life where you just have to sort of let something go and move on to the next thing.
Absolutely.
I looked at the transcript and I was sitting there for the press conference and I listened to the press conference back. And I have to tell you, there were 7 questions about Saquon Barkley's contract situation. The simple fact of the matter is, and I'll let you guys speak on this topic. In my opinion, he has not signed a tender yet. He wants to negotiate to see if he can get this deal done. We are on April. Okay. We are in April. We are just April 21st is when we're taping this show. He doesn't need to be there. He doesn't need to sign anything yet. He has every right to negotiate that deal. If it's the GM's, feeling that he does not want to negotiate with this right now and let this whole thing play out, get through the draft, he has the right to do it. He shouldn't be questioned on it. Again, I know we are in the biggest market in sports, and I know everybody's looking for a headline. And JC, you know the New York media. If they're not going to get you to answer the question the first time, they're going to reshape the question a second time to see if they can get you to crack. But it was obsessive yesterday, and it was frustrating. Now I will let you guys speak on the topic. Saquon Barkley's not involuntary workouts, and you know what? It's okay.
So, Ryan, I actually walked in on that Joe Sheon, I guess, 7th Saquon Barkley question. I don't know, but right away I sensed that he was frustrated with that topic kind of right away. And when I went to BBKL, that's the first thing that I said. I said he sounds like he was had enough of the Saquon questions, but I didn't know it was the 7th or 8th, question of the night on the topic, which he's answered so many times, not including today or yesterday, excuse me, at the press conference on Thursday. But it's like, when is too much? Like, how many is too much? Like, when is like, all right, guys, like, you know what I mean? But this is the first time, Randy, first time that I seen Joe Sheon kind of break character. He kind of broke character a little bit, but I think he now he seems like a human being now. I felt like he was on float mode, and I've been giving him nothing but the utmost praise, for the longest, rightfully so. He deserves it. He's been doing a fantastic job ever since he took over, as the manager for the New York Football Giants. He's been doing a terrific job. And look, I like the way he handled it. He's like, all right, like, kind of put a little tone, but wasn't disrespectful, but you can tell that he was frustrated. So he let a little bit out. And he's a class act. He finished he finished it, I think, okay. He didn't look like, you said he cut it short, but I don't know if it's because they maybe started late, you know what I mean, and he still got stuff to do, you know what I mean. But it was cool. But at the end of the day, Saquon, he can't be here right now because he didn't sign. Right. He didn't sign a franchise tag, so it's not like he's choosing not to show up like Dexter Lawrence is. But that's another conversation, which I'm sure we're going to talk about. Saquon can't be here, but he has until July 17th to figure out if he's actually going to get a new deal or not, right? That is the date that we all need to pay attention to, because I think everybody, we're all optimistic about him actually getting a deal done. And me being a realistic person, I actually see that happening, because at the end of the day, it's like, bro, you can play for $10 million this year, or you can play for like 15, 20, $30 million possibly if they can move some numbers around with a less than 12-year average, because that's the number that they want to keep down. Because at the end of the day, they're not gonna, if they can get him signed, they can actually use that franchise tag for Dexter Lawrence. So
Right.
it actually makes sense for him to to get signed. And I think for both sides. And at the end of the day, because he has that tag on, he's not going to hit the market. You know what I mean? So it's not like he can go elsewhere. So he has to kind of take what the Giants give him. And the Giants have the leverage ever since Daniel Jones signed and they was able to place that franchise tag on Saquon Barkley. The Giants actually have the leverage. And look, we all want Saquon there. I don't think there's a question that he's not going to be there. It's just how,
and he
how.
was in Arizona. He was in Arizona with the rest of the offense. He was working out with the guys. So it's not like he doesn't want to be here. Everyone just has to be patient. That's
I mean, it's a matter of what do we really need to be focused on right now, right? What is it really that's important right now? Is it Saquon's contract, which we have until July 17th to figure out? Is it Dexter Lawrence's contract, which I guess they are kind of working on a little bit here and there? Right now, the focus is on what's going to happen on April 27th, right? And the thing about Saquon's situation is that we do have some leverage, right? We do have, I mean, if you think about it, we kind of got him by the short and curlies a little bit. We've got the tag on him. It is a non-exclusive tag, so other teams can definitely come in and make an offer.
But they're not. But they're not.
See, but that's why there's no urgency.
Right.
It's because Shane sees the market. He knows that there's not going to be teams clamoring over one another to grab a hold of Saquon, or they would have done it by now. And if it hasn't happened by now, then it means that there's no real urgency to signing him up. It behooves everybody. Giants as an organization, Saquon as a player, it behooves him to sign a longer-term deal, a 2 to 3 year deal. It's going to be a Sheon contract, so there's going to be an out after a second year. But what it does is it pays him more money annually than what the cap would pay him, A. And B, it allows us to shift around the signing bonuses and what's actually due and things like that to actually give us a little bit more wiggle room this year, right now. Because right now, fellas, we're just over 2 million in cap space. And that's not even going to sign our draftees. We still haven't even talked about Leonard Williams yet. I mean, and so at the end of the day, he knows where the priorities are, and the priority is not with signing Saquon long-term right now. It will be. Eventually, there's going to be a time for that. But right now, the focus is, and this may be why he's getting a little short, because there's so much going on with the draft, with considerations for this player versus that player, who's going to be available. And, like he said in the press conference, when you're picking at 5 and 7, you've got a little bit of a better idea about which direction you're going to go.
Right.
When you're down in the 20s, it's much, much more difficult to figure out what's actually going to come your way. They've got to do mock draft after mock draft, and really if they want to have a plan for every inevitability and every possibility, that's a lot of time that they're spending trying to figure out what their plan is going to be.
And I generally feel from what he said the other day too, they have 10 draft picks and, like you said, about $2 million to play with right now in open salary. So there might be some moving and shaking. And Ryan Dunleavy, who's a great Giants writer, he does a very, very good job. He was the one who broke Daniel's re-signing. Ryan has reported that the Giants are going to be looking to move some draft picks to possibly bring in a veteran player, which may not be the worst thing in the world. But in that same presser on yesterday, the conversation became about the interior part of the offensive line at the center position, with Feliciano being out in San Francisco and Nick Gates no longer here. They talked about what it's going to look like without those two guys there. And are they happy with what they have? They just signed the kid from the Steelers who's coming over. They also are very happy with Shane Lemieux, whether that's just lip service. But I think that really, I've said it last time we were on the air, but that's got to be the main focus in my eyes right now, is you need to make sure you keep stockpiling that offensive line. They have 14 people under contract right now for the offensive line, and they want to make sure they have their bases covered. I think right now that's really the number one priority, to make sure you have guys who are going to be able to block for Daniel and open up those holes for Saquon to get through. It's great if Saquon's here, but if he doesn't have those gaps to get through, it doesn't make a difference anyway.
Yeah.
JC, the problem that this team has had since you were here has been that offensive line and the consistency of it. Eli was running for his life since 2013 until he retired. Daniel has had a taste of that from his rookie season until about now, or even last year at some points, he was having a hard time. They have Evan Neal. They're hoping that he progresses. Andrew Thomas has been one of the best in the league at his position. Now you have to start solidifying the middle part of that line. So you can go out and pay those position players and have that solidified. That's why they won 2 Super Bowls against the Patriots. It's because that offensive line and that defensive line had so much depth. So when they had injuries that happened, that usually occurred during the season, they were able just to fit guys in without missing a beat. They haven't been able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, look, Kareem McKenzie was the weak part in that line, and that's pretty damn good, right? I mean, if you think about the son-in-law, Snee, you got O'Hara, you got Seibert, you got all of those guys that were just lights out, right? And that's what I think that's what really, they've said, I've heard so many people say that it starts and ends with the line, offensive line, defensive line. And so when you've got those elements locked up, then you're in pretty decent shape. I think it's interesting, though. This one thing that we all have to remember is that this is what I lovingly term bullshit week, right? No team in the NFL is going to tell you exactly who they're going for. And I think by Shane saying, we're happy with what we got, we're good, right? I think that's them saying.
Great screen save right there. great screen get. You froze for a second, Ryan.
Oh, did I? Okay.
Yeah.
That was just me apologizing for answering the question that you asked, JC.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, JC. I know I threw a whole bunch of stuff out there, but please feel free.
No, but I mean, when we talk about the O-line, like, when you look at the Giants O-line, I think on both of the outsides, with Thomas being, the pro that we all thought he was going to be. We saw that last year, him having a dominant year on the offensive side of the ball, which he was like the most consistent player probably on the whole entire team, if you think about it, for the consistency for the duration of the year. And then on the other side, we saw somebody who struggled, on the other side of the line, which is a young guy. He also had a knee injury in Evan Neal. And I look at Thomas and possibly he can rub off on him because Thomas was once a struggler. He struggled a little bit early on in his career. The first 2 years, rookie year was pretty bad. And now he's turning it around relatively quick, so hopefully that can rub off on him. And now as far as the interior goes, I also heard Joe Shane address the offensive line, and he was asked about center, and he was asked about Gates and Feliciano. And he said that, we've been preparing for this right after the Eagles game. He understood that they could possibly leave. So he was already thinking about life after them, early on in the offseason. So that gives me thought because he hasn't brought anybody in, really. He brought the guy, JC, the long last name.
Yeah, Hassenauer, I think.
Hassenauer.
Bless you.
Sorry,
Sorry,
JC.
JC German.
I remember JC though.
Yeah,
I remember JC.
I see what he did there. I
know they brought him in, but he wasn't really like a heralded starter, so he's gonna add depth to the offensive line. For me, I love depth. I think a team that has, depth at every position, even you look at the division, the Eagles kind of have depth at every position. We'll see what happens this offseason with them. But last year, 2022, they had depth all over. And the Giants need depth. You need quality guys because at the end of the day, we all know somebody's going to get hurt. And they may start the season with a 5, and they might have to move it because of somebody not playing well, but they also might have to move the rotation because somebody's hurt. And you want to be bringing in a quality player. But they haven't really brought too many people in. So I'm thinking they're going to go in the draft and get an offensive lineman, interior, probably at that first pick. This is me kind of just guessing at what they're going to do. because it's been all over the place all offseason about, potentially what the Giants are going to do that early. Are they going to go corner? Are they going to go offensive line? Are they going to go receiver? Those are kind of the main three positions that's been asked. But I think we all know that offensive line has to be paramount to their offseason plans. And it doesn't seem like they've addressed that too much. So I look for them to grab maybe a couple of guys in the draft, if not just one, but at least a couple of guys in the draft to address the offensive line. And I'm curious about what they actually are going to focus on, because I feel like when you get a draft, and you need certain things, you kind of focus on one thing. Is it overall depth? Is it the offensive side? Is it the defensive side? So I'm interested to see how they're going to basically attack the draft this year.
I'm sorry, Ron. I just wanted to bring up one other point too.
Yeah.
And Joe Shane brought up a really interesting point too about what you're looking for, because obviously he said there was because of COVID, there was an extra year of eligibility for a lot of these players that are coming out this year, so they got that one extra year. And so you have some guys who are coming out a little bit more pro ready than others. He talked about on how he, compared to last year, he has a better idea what Kafka's looking for. He has a better idea of what Wink is looking for on his side of the ball. So now it's what's out there. Okay, if we're steady here, this doesn't have to be our main focus. Let's aim for here where maybe we're not that safe. And I think right now, I think there's always improvements you can do. If obviously, if you can find someone better to play this position than what we have, you obviously are going to go with the better player. But they're still talking about wide receivers, and and one of the questions, JC, I didn't have the opportunity to ask because we were dealing with all this other nonsense, was I wanted to bring up the fact that they re-signed Sterling Shepard and Darius Slayton at a premium price compared to where they were last year. Last year, both guys took such a major pay cut, only about making 1.1 million to 1.5, both of them each, to now making close to $2 to $3 million each. That's extra money that we were talking about. Was that the right thing to do, to spend that type of money on those two guys? Sterling Shepard is an amazing locker room guy. He was a leader. He showed the right example, even being hurt. There's guys who get hurt and you don't see them for the rest of the season.
Right. You just answered your own question.
Right. I was just about to say that. Yeah. I mean, that's the major thing. And even Slayton has a great relationship with Daniel Jones.
Mm-hmm.
And we understand that, and that says a lot. When you have that familiarity with, the guy you're throwing the ball to, that definitely, that's very helpful, and I definitely see Slayton as a locker room guy as well, and you need guys like that. You need guys that are veteran. Look, he's a young guy, but he's a veteran. He's been around the league for a while. He's made some big plays in the NFL, you know what I mean? And he's, had his ups and his downs, but like now you can sit there and say, okay, Slayton is a veteran receiver. Let's see how he does this year. We all know Sterling, Shepard, he's very proven. He's proven himself over the years. He just, had a lot of injuries throughout his career, like, a lot of people have had, but he's definitely seemed like he's one of those guys that you just needed around at the end of the day. You might not even get a lot of playing time from him, but at the end of the day, you need that guy in your locker room because he's all about winning. He's all about, camaraderie and getting the guys together and lifting them up and being the motivational figure for them. And you saw that last year with him going down very early in the season to a terrible injury late. And I feel like it's like a little later in his career too, where you can kind of fold it in, and he didn't. He took an opportunity to be there for his team. And, I think he willed him a couple of wins last year just for him being there, his presence. Guys really feed off of that, and I'm thankful for them, for the Giants to actually make that move and signing those guys, because it just adds. So I think if you really look at it, what Isaiah Hodgins did last year, and like Paris Campbell, the younger guys coming in, they've had decent years too. Paris Campbell's coming off a pretty decent year over from Indianapolis too. And you pair that with Sterling Shepard's body of work, Slayton's body of work, you have a good fundamental group of receivers that one great draft pick, second, third round guy. We're not even talking about Wan'Dale Robinson because he's almost an unproven guy, even though he was a second round draft pick last year. You add those guys to the mix and maybe get one more guy. You're looking at a formidable offense with, a little bit of depth there as well, So I like what the Giants are doing in the offseason. And I'm very, like I said before, I want to see where they go out in the draft. Maybe we can do a wager and what we think, you know what I'm saying, where we're gonna go. Friendly wager, no money.
Sure.
Maybe some push-ups or who's buying
Oh, I'm not doing any.
dinner. We could
I'm
do
not
that.
doing
We
any
could do the
fucking
dinner.
push-ups. You can forget about that. I'll buy you
No,
dinner.
the push-ups he's talking about are the ice cream bars. They're the ones you do the push-ups.
Those I
They'll
would do.
just be for show. Like, get down and do them right now. Give me 2 right now, you know. But
I might if I'll do 2 push-ups. I'm going to be in traction for about a week.
Right.
Randy, where you think the Giants are leaning to in the first round? Given what falls to them, given if they had, you know, a group of guys, a linebacker, you know, offensive lineman, a center, a guard, and then they have a defensive back and they have a receiver, all ranked. If we get to 25, we'll take any one of these guys. In that scenario, who do you think the Giants are going to go with?
I think from a position standpoint, I think they're going to go the interior, somewhere in the interior part of the offensive line, and that's just. But I maybe I'm just too realistic where I think that I feel this is where they should be going. I honestly feel they need to solidify the interior part of the line before you can do anything else. That has to be your base for the quarterback you just spent all the money on, for the money you're going to spend on the running back, and the money that you just gave your wide receiving core and your tight ends. You need to make sure that offensive line is going to give the quarterback the time that he needs to get those guys the ball. So I think that interior part of the line is going to be the top priority of the draft.
How about you, Ryan? What do you
think? So I'm of a couple of minds about this, right? I absolutely think that it really is all going to depend on where the runs happen, right? I mean, if there's a run over the first 10 or 15 plays on cornerbacks, then the ones that we are looking at in the top part of our draft class are not going to be there, right? If there's a run on receivers, it's the same thing. I don't know that there's going to be a run on interior offensive linemen, right? We know that there are a number of teams that do want a center. The Texans are up there. The Colts are up there. There's a couple of folks that are saying, listen, we do need interior linemen as well, but are they going to be willing to take a flyer in the first round on a center as well? There are a lot of folks out there. Part of the issue with trying to pinpoint the direction that the Giants are going to go is that there's such a wide variety of opinions about where you ought to draft this interior lineman, right? I mean, does Tippmann go in the first round? Does he go in the second round? Does this guy Schmitz go in the first round? Does he go in the second round? Are you reaching if you get him at 25, right? I mean, could you have gotten him down the line in the second round, right? So I'm almost tempted to say, and this is a little bit crazy, but I'm almost tempted to say, if we get to 25 and there's a cornerback on the charts that we really like, okay, we take that cornerback because I think we really could use some additional depth at the defensive back position. And then you maybe package up some of those later round picks. I know they're not worth much, but maybe you don't move up all that much. You move up a little bit in the second round and you pick a Schmitz or you pick a Tippmann. I think either one of those guys would be fantastic. I like the idea of Schmitz being an all-around player, but I also like the idea of Tippmann just beating the shit out of everybody he looks at. And so, I mean, I think if there is a corner, it all depends on who's on their board, right? They know that Shane knows that we have a lot of positions that we need to fill. I think the big ones, as you mentioned, it's corner, it's interior line. Maybe, if, like you said, JC, if there's that star receiver that we didn't think was going to be there at that point that can really be a help to us, maybe we go that route. I think realistically, we're probably looking at a corner first and then trying to move up and pick up our interior lineman.
Yeah, I think if I like the guy from Wisconsin, of course, obviously Tippmann. If John Michael Smith is there, I think they take him. I think that's the guy that the Giants would take if he's available. If they have, receiver on the board that's high, and if they have all things even and they have a couple of options to go with, I think they're going to go with that guy. And I don't think for me, it's like, kind of rolling the dice and just trying to guess. But I think the Giants, they know they have to address the offensive line, and they're going to make a move early on in the draft in the first 2 rounds. I'm just going to bet it's going to be the first round and get one of those guys that's John Michael Smith's a 5th-year senior, and we talked about the extra year. These guys are coming out 22, 23 years old, and they've played a lot of good football. These are grown men, that come in the league and, playing on offensive line. You be around them defensive linemen, right, Randy? They're a lot bigger when you see them in person. Them defensive linemen, they're a lot bigger when you see them in person. You look up. I remember the first time I seen Sean Rodgers. Remember Sean Rodgers? Remember the first time I seen him, I was like, you are a huge human being. It's like 6'7", 6'8", 360 pounds. Like,
you're a planet.
I felt that way. I felt that way the first time I walked into the locker room and I saw Justin Tuck and Brandon Jacobs and some of those guys, especially Brandon Jacobs. I felt like I was like
running back.
Oh my God.
I play running back.
Yeah, he was. But you remember, he's like a brick house. I remember I'm sitting there, I'm like, this man must eat children. Like, I'm sitting there, I'm like,
his son is huge too.
Yeah,
like,
his son is huge.
Just a monster.
Well, that picture of him and Dexter has surfaced out a little bit. You know what's also very interesting too, guys, and the feeling around that Giants facility yesterday. It was the first time in a while I've actually been there. I think since right around that Eagles game. There's the level of, it's business. And I saw Dable very quickly for a couple minutes yesterday. I think it was yesterday. Yeah, Dable was walking around and he knew exactly where he was. It wasn't like it was last year, obviously, where everyone's still in that feeling out period. And that was one of the questions that we had asked him on Monday was, how is it different now compared to last year? What adjustments are you making? And he is fully aware of the possibility of a second-year hangover. And he wants to try to avoid that. He wants to try to avoid that and keep everybody focused on a week-by-week. You're trying to win that week. And I think that, and he's always also trying to do that now. Like he's not letting up any information that he doesn't have to let up. JC, you said it during the season last year. Dable is the master. Dable and Sheon are the master of the media. They're like the Derek Jeters of the New York Giants, where they're gonna let you on that patio, but they ain't letting you in that house, man. No. That's just the way it is.
No, and then he has his go-tos, like when they ask about, hey, have you talked to Sterling? Have you talked to whoever, Saquon? He's like, yeah, I have conversations with him, but we'll keep that in-house between us. So he's like, yes, we did. And they're all like, yeah. Yeah. And he always shuts them down, and he just repeats that over and over and over again, because he has a lot of go-tos. And I feel like when whoever coached him in media, and it might have been himself, because you can coach yourself, you learn over time. And then you put together a plan on how I answer some of these tough questions without divulging too much information. And he doesn't play any games. He just says, boom, we keep that in-house. Next question. Ask him again. Yep, I did talk to him too. I actually talked to him the same day. But again, we're going to keep that between us. So he leads them. He definitely leads them on. But I think he handles it masterfully, because he doesn't seem like a prick. He doesn't seem like an a-hole, even though he's kind of running you around in circles a little bit as he's talking, because he's not giving you too much information. That's how it should be. Yeah. At the end of the day, you shouldn't tell everybody what's going on. People shouldn't know the ins and outs of your organization, and even with the guys in the locker room, it shouldn't be too much divulged, on social media. Everything in the locker room, there's no cameras in there for a reason. You know what I mean? Like, of course, guys are, not wearing clothes at times, but there's other reasons why as well. You know what I mean? Like, it's a sacred environment. When you keep it in-house like that, now that feels more sacred. It feels more like a brotherhood. You know what I mean? Like, and that's what it really feels like. It's like nobody really knows what's going on but us. And that's kind of how they did it. Kind of reminiscent of the Patriots.
I was about to
say,
right?
he worked with Belichick for a long time.
Yep. Yeah. Saban too. He worked with two of the greatest coaches on their respective levels of all time, if not the greatest on their levels. That's crazy.
It seems like it's a little bit of an evolved form, though, right?
Because
Belichick was a prick, right? I mean,
so was Saban.
Saban was an asshole when it comes to that stuff, and Dable's just not, right. He's keeping it back. He's not giving you any information. He's not showing his cards, but he's not going to he's not going to treat you like you're not a human being. You know what I mean? So I find that's refreshing in a real way. And honestly, one of the other things that I found really good about the way that Daboll and Shane are approaching this year, even in contract negotiations, is that they are trying to be human about it, right? I mean, at the end of the day, they mentioned in those press conferences that they have formed relationships with Saquon. They have formed relationships with McKinney and Sexy Dexy and all these guys. They love these guys. They don't want to see him go, right? They know that there's a business, and they know that there's going to have to be a separation of what they want to do and what they need to do from a business perspective. But there's a mutual respect in there. And I think there is a camaraderie that contributed in a very large way to the success last year. They know that, they see that, and they want to see it happen again this year. But they realize that it is a business, and sometimes hard decisions have to be made. I think Joe's going to want to keep Saquon in, not only because he likes him, but he knows that he can be a positive force for the offense. But just the fact that they have developed those relationships mean something to them, and that's a part of the culture that they have brought to the Giants is a very positive. I've been working in HR for 20 something years, telling everybody a little bit about me. That's something that you want to try to do, right? So at the end of the day, the fact that they're doing that in their organization and establishing that truly human ideology as part of who they are and who this team is and who this organization is a very, very positive thing in my mind.
And I also think what you just said too about the personal relationships and Dexter Lawrence and Daboll and Joe Shane all said the same thing. They're like, he doesn't have to be here right now.
Yeah.
But they're in constant communication. And that's and it's not like where it's Saquon where he's not allowed in the building. It's Dexter can show up tomorrow.
Yeah.
And because he's still in their contract.
Sure.
And on Monday they asked McKinney about his contract situation, and he knows it's going to take care of itself. He just switched agents, and he knows that going into next season, his contract situation is coming up. Andrew Thomas, they're going to take care of Andrew Thomas. They want to try and get that done ASAP as well. So, there's a lot of moving pieces going on. And guys, Ryan and I sat down the other day and we did the way too early win-loss game.
Uh-oh.
And Ryan, I
pull this up.
Yeah,
I gotta see where it is. I have it.
If we remember correctly, I think I'm between 7 and 9 wins again.
Yeah, I think you came out at like 7 or 8.
Yeah, 7 or 8 wins. That's where I ended up. And Ryan has one loss, and us at the Super Bowl. He's already got the parade going in the parking lot. He and Daniel are hanging out like this, holding up the trophy together.
Let's just be realistic. That's what it's gonna be. No, I think I had them at 10 wins.
I think you had 10 or 11 wins. You had them at 10 or 11 wins, and my general assumption is obviously, until they go out to the field, you don't know what's what.
Right,
but
of course.
I have a real general feeling of there's some of those teams last year that were really bad who got really injury hit, like the Rams. Stafford's going to come back, and it's going to be Stafford's revenge this year. Not saying he has all the same pieces to play with, but there's some teams that are just going to be better. You don't know what's going on with the Jets with Rodgers. It's
the Giants, they don't have to pay attention to the AFC at all. They just got to look. First of all, they don't got to pay attention to the rest of the NFC. They just got to pay attention to the NFC East and be competitive. Yeah. Because if the Giants do what they did last year, they're not going to make the playoffs. So I'm not looking at overall record. I'm paying attention to that division record, because last year they went 1-4-1 in the division. If they do that again, there's no way they're making the playoffs. And the only reason they made the playoffs last year, like you said, because of Rams and the NFC South being absolutely boo-boo the entire year, and no teams are over 500 for the entire year, and like that's not going to happen again. It's not going to happen again. The teams are going to get better, and not to say that this division is going to get any worse, but now you have to compete with the other teams that you're playing in the division when you're looking at that playoff spot, right? That's what we're looking at.
Yep. And Shane was Joe Shane was asked yesterday about whether the way he builds his team, is he looking at what the division rivals are doing? Yeah. Or is he just it was a very, very good question. And yet you have to keep an eye on what's going on. If you look at we don't know what the Commanders are doing at the quarterback position. That's like one of the really big things. I think Ryan is trying out next week for the Commander's position for the quarterback. But
I'm asking for too much money though. They're not going to sign me up.
Probably get it too.
Listen, if you can't make it at the quarterback, you definitely can make it as one of the owners. So and then you look at obviously Dallas. I think Dallas is sort of taking a step back because they're now cutting back on a lot of high priced players. I always feel like the Cowboys always have that window of 3 to 4 years where they're always going to win one playoff game or something of that sorts, and then they rebuild again and they try and do it. And I think now they're going to be in that recycle mode now of seeing what else they can put around Dak by trying to cut salary. They got rid of Elliott. They put the tag on Pollard, and now they're trying to figure out what they're doing with their receiving core. And Philadelphia still looks like they're the class of the division. The way the way they lost some of those veterans who sign on for that 1 year to see if they can get that ring. But they're still so deep everywhere else. So I'm looking at where the Giants fit in that and where they're strategizing. I think the Giants obviously are still just focusing on themselves. I think right now they're the second best team in the division. I honestly feel that. The Giants are the second best team in the division right now.
Right now, I mean, possibly. I'm going off of last year. They weren't last year. But possibly, yes, they could be the second best team in the division right now. Yeah.
I'm looking at them because right now they're ticking up. Okay, you have a lot more optimism of not only of what they did last year and what they're looking to do this year, but I'm also looking at 2 years from now. They still have young enough players that they're still going to be gelling together, and within the 2 or 3 years, they're going to be with the class of the division. Right?
There goes Randy thinking 2025 again.
Yeah. When 2025 comes around, guys, you're going to be thanking me.
Watch out.
Okay, you're going to be thanking me. Okay. But just in general though, like I look at the Cowboys on the downswing, and the Commanders are always the wild card. You never know what they're going to do. God forbid, Doug Williams might come out of retirement and start.
Let me tell you something though. The thing is about the Commanders, they have a talented roster, especially on defense. That defensive line is second to none in the NFL. That defensive line is very, very good. So if they find somebody to play quarterback for that team, look to have all teams pushing to be over 500 again.
Look at Lamar Jackson, man. I can't see Lamar not wanting to go too far from Baltimore. That could be a real interesting.
You think Lamar Jackson to Washington?
There has been so much talk of it. You have no idea. There's been so much talk about Lamar Jackson possibly ending up in a Commander's uniform. That was like up until about a week and a half ago. That's what I was hearing the most of. So
Lamar has to get off of what Deshaun Watson and the Browns owner cleverly did to that division. What he did was he locked out the teams from their own quarterbacks.
Yeah.
That's what they did, because Joe Burrow's coming up, and Joe Burrow going to be looking at Deshaun Watson like, how much you said you got again?
Right.
Yeah. Hey, I need all of that.
Well, and the Jalen Hurts deal didn't help, right?
But I'm saying, like, the reason why teams are shying away because teams just don't have that much money sitting around, because that's how you have to have it in escrow. You have to have it up front now, basically.
But you have to remember, though, a quarter of Deshaun Watson's salary is just to help pay off of lawsuits.
Right.
So you have to put that in consideration.
I think that was such a genius move by the Browns, because it's like, yeah, we'll take his baggage, but we might get rid of one of these quarterbacks in the division.
Right.
Like, we might get rid of both of them if these teams don't do it the right way. If these guys want what Deshaun Watson got, then you better give up some stuff to keep these guys, unless you have $250 million just to sit around for the next 5 years.
Where he would be with a good coach and in a great situation, and he'd be winning.
Don't say the New York Giants.
No. Can you imagine him ending up with the Pittsburgh Steelers and Tomlin? That would be really interesting, wouldn't it?
Well, they got Pickens. I think they got their quarterback.
Yeah, but if
we're not talking reality here, we're talking fantasy.
Yeah, we're having a little bit of fun with this whole idea. Imagine, but just think about that one. Think about that pairing.
What do you think about him in New England? You think that could work over there?
I don't know if he would be able to handle Belichick. How about him in New York with the Jets? If they can't work out this Aaron Rodgers thing, man.
Listen, they've already got the money set aside. Right?
First of all, the Jets, let me tell you something. I feel like the Jets always have a decent roster,
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
all the time. You know what I mean? Like every year, their roster is always decent. They don't really have a sorry roster. Their schedule don't always show that, of course. And even last year, they started the season almost just as good as the Giants. I think they were 6-1 at one point or something like that. So they had a great start to the season, and then the whole coach, quarterback, back and forth. What are we doing? We're playing a sorry kid or not? Like we
The
playing
wheels fell off.
our savior who broke all of his ribs. Like what are we doing? Like it was so much going on with them. And then I think Salah lost the team at the end of the year.
Yeah.
So I don't look for the Jets to be good at all this year, even with Aaron Rodgers or one of these quarterbacks, because I don't think Salah has that team anymore. And when you lose the team, like the city knows that. Like the fans, they understand what's going on, and you lose the fans too. Like, and that's not a good combination. So look for them to kind of revitalize that relationship with Salah and the team and Salah with the fans, because I don't think they're feeling him right now. I don't think the players are feeling him. I don't think the fans are feeling him, and that means a lot, especially with the media in New York. Like they'll turn on you real quick. You know what I mean? It'll go from asking, "Hey, do you guys think you're gonna make the playoff?" to, "Hey, like, do you think you're gonna get fired this week?"
Yeah, right.
Look, JC, let me ask you though, because you were in a situation in 2017 where the coach sort of lost the team.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you describe what that feeling is sort of like? Is it more of a paranoia feeling? Is it this like, oh man, this guy's up here trying to give a rah-rah speech again, and we're just not having it? Like,
Yeah,
what's it like?
It was a snowball effect that year. It was, not a good start to the season. And then like right when kind of things were trying to get figured out, and I felt like people were starting to get on board and things were starting to turn it around. We just had to show up with our record. Everybody gets hurt in one game, against the Chargers. Myself and all of our 4 receivers got hurt,
I
which
remember
is
that game.
insane. Like Odell, Brandon Marshall, Dwayne Harris, and Sterling got hurt at the same time, like the same game. It's insane. I don't think that's ever been done before. But like then the whole like the doubt started setting in, and it was really early in the season.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then the benching of Eli Manning happened, and that was not good. And what was so crazy too? I don't know if I told you guys, but during my tenure with McAdoo, I actually really liked him as a man. Like he was, for me, like there was a couple times where he checked on me outside of like normal hours. Like he reached out to me, I think after I had surgery. "Hey JC, how are you? How was surgery? How you recovering?" I was like, "Oh, okay, cool." And then my daughter, something was going on with her. I forgot what it was, but he asked me about my daughter. He was like, "Hey man, how's your daughter? Just checking on you, seeing how everything going." And I'm like, "Man, I like that dude." Ryan, I promise you, the same day I was having a conversation with with Kelvin Shepard. Sorry, the other
Yeah.
Shepard.
Yeah,
I was having a conversation with Shep, and I was like, "Bro, I like McAdoo." Like, and I told him what I just told y'all. He was like, "Oh, that's some real dude stuff right there. That's some real stuff, right?" So I was like, "Yeah, man." Not even 30 minutes later, we at practice, call a team meeting up and say, "I'm starting Geno over Eli Manning." I looked at Kelvin, I said, "Take back everything I just said. This is insane. This is insane. What are we talking about here?"
Yeah. Yeah, you
What are
can
we
lose
talking about here?
You lose it real quick when you do something like
Got
that.
fired, and a few days later, he was
A few days
fired.
later.
Yeah,
Sure.
as soon as that, I'm sorry, but as soon as I remember just the backlash with that,
It happened so fast. Oh my gosh.
I just remember Ian Rappaport put the note out the day he got let go. Like we're all sort of like I'm JC, I'm not lying. I was with Patty Triana and Ed and all those guys and everything. And all of a sudden we're like, oh, what? And Chris, we're all just like, oh, when it's going to happen. All of a sudden you just saw the tweet from Ian Rappaport. Ben McAdoo just told me he was fired. I was like, okay, then that's happened. And then all of a sudden,
who had 3 days?
And then I know that 5 minutes later, we're like I literally said to Chris, I'm like, I wonder I know that must have been really tough for Reese. 5 minutes later, Jerry Reese has just been let go too. We're like, oh, no one's safe now, man. So, and meanwhile, Ed looks at me and he goes, I wonder if Eli's doing cartwheels right now. So
I don't think so. That's
No,
not good
probably
when your
not.
coach get
That's
fired in the
probably
middle of
not.
the season.
no, and you know, I really felt for you guys, and like I don't, JC, I don't know if you ever heard this perspective, but I was talking with Pat Capra.
Yes.
Pat and I were talking, and Pat's been around this for a long time, and he said the worst thing about losing a coach mid-season and having to play out the string like that is the players not knowing what their future is going to be.
Yep.
And knowing that everybody's job is on the line when a new GM comes in. And you look at what happened that following training camp going into 2018. I know you weren't re-signed at that point, but all of Reese's guys, I can go up and down the list. One of them who is back this year, I'm sorry, his name just slipped my brain. He was back at training camp this year. He was on Tampa, won a Super Bowl with Tom, and he came back to the Giants for the defense. I'm sorry, his name just slipped my brain, but he was with us this year, and he got cut during camp. Andrew Adams.
Andrew Adams.
Andrew Adams. Yeah.
Double A.
Yeah, Double A. Andrew Adams came back, and when I remember talking with him, and he's sitting there saying, "Because I never wanted to leave here, but when Gettleman came in, he said it didn't matter who you were, what you were doing. He wanted to clean as much house, and he wanted to get all of Jerry's guys out of there."
Yeah,
that's the scary part, man. I
Sure.
guess of losing a coach halfway through the year because things are falling apart. It's the players don't know what the future holds. It
Yep.
doesn't matter if they're under a contract. The NFL has that set where. So
yeah, I fully agree. I've been in a couple like transitional years like that. My last year in New Orleans, that was the Bounty Gate year. That was that year
Oh God.
where Sean Payton was suspended, Greg Williams was suspended, John Vilma, a whole bunch of other players were suspended for that year. And the coaching was, and this was, signing, out of college. It's a 3-4 year deal. So I was basically on my last year in New Orleans. My contract about to be up. And I was just like, yeah, I don't think I'm gonna be back here, next year, given that the whole regime is gone. Like,
Yep.
Sean Payton, he didn't draft me, but he got me out of college. And Greg Williams was the one that like wanted me, you know what I mean? And both of those guys are gone. Like, so, and then also that last year with New York Giants, the last year there, like head coach, GM gets fired mid-season. So now it's like, all right, and I'm hurt. Like I'm out for the year. Like I'm just sitting there, and I wasn't like Sterling. Like I was out of the locker room. Like I was getting my rehab and I was going home. Like I was like, I was there, but like I wasn't always there. You know what I mean? Like I really wasn't. Like I was like,
peace. I'm peacing.
It was a little toxic, a little bit, like a little. The losing when you.
Well, that's it.
Well, that's
winning. Winning solves a lot of problems, right? And so
it was rough, and I was like kind of depressed. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was hurt, like probably the end of my career. Like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, it was rough.
You didn't know you had all this ahead of you, so
right.
Well, listen, boys, this has been a fun episode. We have the draft this upcoming week from today. So we will figure out when we're going to be back next, because whether it's going to be to preview the draft or go, review what the Giants do. JC, as always, we thank you for being the lifeblood, the heartbeat. You are Ryan Sunshine. That's my
guy. Yeah. My guy Ryan.
And of course the professor. Can't thank you guys enough. Appreciate it. Backsportspage.com. Big announcement coming in coming weeks.
Right.
We have a big announcement coming. Where
an announcement's coming. Gotcha.
That's right. Save the date.
Let me put it this way: you're gonna get to see these beautiful faces and me possibly on a bigger screen.
Hey.
There's your tease, as we call it in the business.
The hook. Set the hook.
Yeah. For Jonathan Casillas, Ryan Darlington, I'm Randy Zellea, backsportspage.com. Thank you for tuning into the Big Blue Report. We appreciate it. Lots of things coming. Go Big Blue. We'll see you next time.